episode of Throwing It Back with Sean Farrell. I am Sean Farrell. God is great all the time. All the time, God is great. Jesus Christ died and he rose again. It's going to head to get into it. Okay, so the other day, I mentioned the Portland Trail Blazers. Okay, and they self-destructed. Okay, and I mentioned they self-destructed in the 1990 NBA Finals, where Bill Laimbeer had Kevin Duckworth thinking more about Laimbeer than thinking about playing a game. Okay, so I'm gonna get into that in a minute. We're also going to talk about Moses Malone being in Portland for a brief time. Yes, and we're also going to talk about the Bulls players who wore number 23 before Michael Jordan. Okay, that's something interesting that I saw. Okay, so let's get to Moses Malone first. So the ABA folded in 1976. Okay, the ABA folded in 1976, and they had what they called a dispersal draft. Okay, they had a ABA dispersal draft where teams who weren't going to the NBA could be picked up by NBA teams in the ABA dispersal draft. Okay, and so of course, Dr. J, he went to Philadelphia. Okay, we all remember that. But another big one was Moses Malone. Okay, all right. So Moses came to the ABA first. As a matter of fact, he played for the Utah Stars. Okay, yeah, played for the Utah Stars, I believe, who were in the ABA team, right? Okay, and so in the 1976 dispersal draft, he was chosen by the Portland Trail Blazers. Okay, who ironically had Bill Walton. They already had Bill Walton, and they had just acquired Maurice Lucas in a trade. Okay, they also picked up Maurice Lucas from the ABA. Okay, and they had another guy by the name of Lloyd Neal. Okay, yeah, Portland had a reserve by the name of Lloyd Neal. So they had Bill Walton, Hall of Famer, Maurice Lucas, and Lloyd Neal. Okay, so okay, so as I said, they drafted him, ABA dispersal draft, but then he was traded from Portland 5 days before the regular season started, before the 76-77 season started, the championship season, right? Yeah. I guess Portland figured out they kind of had a bit of a fear. Where would they find play hanging time for Moses with Bill Walton, Maurice Lucas, Lloyd Neal on the roster? Okay, so Moses Malone, man, he performed pretty well in the preseason for Portland. In one game, he had 24 points, 12 rebounds, in a 129-114 win over Seattle. Okay, so Moses Malone was pretty good in the preseason for Portland, but again, they traded him 5 days before the regular season started, and but Bill Walton and Maurice Lucas, they were the ones pushing for the Blazers to keep Moses Malone. Okay, and in hindsight, and when you look back, at it, they should have kept him. Okay, when you look back in hindsight, when you look back at it, they should have kept him. Okay, but yeah, Maurice Lucas and Bill Walton, they were pushing the Portland Trailblazers to keep Moses Malone, but Portland said no. They already made their decision, and plus, the Trailblazers thought he would command a larger salary and more hanging time. Okay, and as I said, he was already behind Bill Walton, Lloyd Neal, and another free agent they had picked up, the Portland Trailblazers, a guy by the name of Robin Jones. Okay, and of course you had Maurice Lucas too. So yeah, um, so Bill Walton, had some advice for the Portland Trailblazers. I guess when they traded Moses Malone, Bill Walton said, "Never trouble until trouble troubles you." Okay, again, never trouble until trouble troubles you. Okay, if that makes sense. Now looking back at it, they probably should have kept him. Okay, they probably should have kept him because look what happened to Bill Walton midway through the 1978 season. Okay, his foot began bothering him. By that time, Moses Malone was in Houston and on his way to becoming a three-time MVP and an NBA champion. Okay, so yeah, it probably should have kept him. Um, so um, so there was a very unlikely All-Star on the Portland Trailblazers in the mid to late '80s. Okay, the guy's name was Steve Johnson. Okay, Steve Johnson, and he had a couple of stops with a few NBA teams. He played for Kansas City, the Kings, who were in the Kansas City back in the early part of the '80s. Then he played for Chicago. Okay. Um, Ironically, he was part of that trade that sent Reggie Theus to the Kings midway through the 1984 season. Yeah, yeah, he was part of that trade that sent Reggie Theus to the Kings midway through the 1984 season, which opened the door for who? Michael Jordan. But yeah, Steve Johnson, he did play a season with Michael Jordan, averaged 10 points a game. Um, okay. Then he moved on to Portland, where obviously Sam Bowie was having his issues. So Sam Bowie was injured. Okay, during much of his time in Portland. So Portland had like a couple of players. Um, um, Caldwell Jones. They traded for Kevin Duckworth midway through Duckworth's rookie year, 1987. So they had Caldwell Jones, Kevin Duckworth, Steve Johnson, and they briefly bought back Maurice Lucas at the end of his career. Okay, but yeah, Steve Johnson was a forgotten all-star for the Portland Trailblazers. Okay, so in 1987, he averaged nearly 17 points per game and 7 rebounds per game. Then in 1988, right, he averaged 15.4 points per game and 5.5 rebounds per game. And he was voted as an NBA All-Star, right? But injuries caught him during that season, okay? Injuries caught him during that season, okay? And he didn't get to play in the All-Star game, and he didn't get to play much of the season, unfortunately. And so he was traded to Minnesota. He was picked up by Minnesota in the expansion draft, okay, in 1989. Then he went on to Seattle, then finished out his career in 1991 with Golden State, okay. But yeah, Steve Johnson, an unlikely or forgotten all-star for the Portland Trailblazers. And I mentioned the 1990 NBA Finals, okay? So Detroit won game one. Okay. Portland was actually up by 10. Okay. Portland was up by 10 points with 7 minutes to go. Then Isaiah Thomas took over that game. Isaiah Thomas ended up with 43 points. Okay. Yeah, Portland led by 10 with 7 minutes to go. Then Isaiah Thomas took over, finished with 43 points. Portland comes back, ties the series at 1. People forget Bill Laimbeer actually hit 6 threes that game. Yeah, Bill Laimbeer actually hit 6 threes in game 2. And he tied the NBA record. Okay. So Portland won game 2. Terry Porter says, we're going to the crib and we ain't coming back. Okay. So the Pistons up until that point in 1990, they haven't won in Portland from the second game of Bill Walton's NBA career on up until 1990. The Pistons had never won in Portland. So from 1974 through 1990, the Pistons had never won in Portland. Okay. But that pretty much changed because Detroit pretty much blew them out in game 3. Now game 4 was the interesting game, okay? Because it looked like Portland was on their way to getting blown out again. But then they came back, made a game of it, okay? And so I believe Detroit was up by 1. Okay. There were 6.5 seconds left, okay? And it was 6.5 seconds left in the game, okay? And oh man. 6.5 seconds left. This is what happened. I'm not going to spoil it for you. Let me just say it involves 2 players. Gerald Henderson of the Detroit Pistons and Danny Young of the Portland Trail Blazers. This is what happened. Okay, hold on. Oops. No, not that. Dang it. Okay, here we go. Okay, so got it right. All right, so yeah, like I said, it involves 2 players. Gerald Henderson of the Pistons and Danny Young of the Portland Trail Blazers. This is what happened next.
Inbound. Everyone on his feet. Here's the pressure. Don't let your man beat you lost. Thomas there it is. Austin Edwards. Here's to Henderson. Gerald Henderson lays it in. 1 second to go. Young fires a 3. Does it count? Mike Matherson's going to the scorer's table. It doesn't count. It doesn't count. Rick Adelman is living.
But on the verge of a second championship, Chuck Daly remained typically cool.
Well, probably ruined another suit. You know, thank God they're not too expensive.
Whoops. I accidentally stopped the video instead of stopping the footage, right? Oh, boy. But you heard what Chuck Daly said. You heard what Chuck Daly said? I probably ruined another suit. Thank God they're not too expensive. Which makes me ask the question, was Chuck Daly cheap? Did Chuck Daly go cheap on suits? Probably not. Probably not, because back in 1990, everything costed less, okay? Everything costed less in 1990. But anyway, so yeah. So Gerald Henderson scored a basket, okay? And Danny Young hit a 3. Only thing about it is he got it off a fraction of a second after the clock hit 0, okay? Yeah, he got the shot off a fraction of a second late after the clock went off. But if Danny Young would have hit that three, if that three would have counted, okay, it probably would have been a brand new series, okay. Instead of Detroit up 3-1, we all know the series would have been tied at 2-2, okay. But again, those cyber calls happen, okay. Danny Young gets a three off a fraction of a second late. Pistons go a 3-1. Y'all remember the shot Ron Harper hit, which was a fraction of a second short in Game 6 of the 1998 NBA Finals that the referees counted? Okay. Then there's the Howard Isley three-pointer that the refs did not count. Okay. So that's a 5-point swing. So the Bulls win that game 87-86. Just think about it. If they count that Howard Isley three, it's probably 89-87 Utah. Yeah, it's probably 89-87 Utah. And the game goes to Game 7. But things happen. Things happen. In the unpredictable world of NBA basketball. So, yeah. So, okay. So, Bulls players who wore number 283 before Michael Jordan made it his own, okay? It was a guy by the name of Jackie Dinkins, okay? He played 18 games for the Bulls in 1972. So he wore it for 18 games. Norm Van Leer, believe it or not, who recently passed away. Rest in peace. Norm Van Leer, who wore number 2 for much of his time in Chicago. But he wore number 23 for a short time. In his time with the Bulls, there was a guy by the name of Roland Garrett, who played for the Bulls from 1973 to 1976, okay? And there was another guy by the name of Ollie Mack, okay? Played for Chicago in 1980-81, and he wore it for 26 games. And finally, a guy by the name of Mike Bratz. 1982-83. He wore it during the 1982-83 season. So all these players who wore 23 before Jordan: Jackie Dinkins, Norm Van Leer, Roland Garrett, Ollie Mack, and Mike Bratz. Okay? Before Michael Jordan took it and pretty much made it his own. Yeah, but I thought that was pretty interesting right there. Bulls players who wore number 23 before Michael Jordan. The only one I couldn't find a picture of was Norm Van Leer, okay? And most of Norm Van Leer's photos with the Bulls, he's wearing his usual number 2. Okay, so, yeah. All right, that's it. And that's all for Throwing It Back with Sean Farrell. I am Sean Farrell. May God bless you all.